afternoon and welcome to the Cape Verdean Heritage Oral History Project. My name is Angelina Rainio Chilaka, and today we are talking with two wonderful people. This is Cynthia Monteiro Pina and Julia Monteiro Johnson, excuse me, and they are here to kind of share a little bit about their history and all the active things that they do in the town and the community. So welcome, ladies, and thank you so much for volunteering your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so just have some questions to kind of get us going. And what was it like growing up as a kid? Because you grew up in South Dennis. So could you give us a little background about the town and what it was like there on Center Street?
It was, first of all, I'd say that it was a really nice place to grow up. I can remember it just being families, and those families were friends, and you knew just about everyone. And it was just a kind place to grow up. It was really, really very special. I just remember going to school and having friends, and we had friends of many, many different backgrounds. And that was really nice. I think it was kind of a sheltering environment.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a nice environment. I have really good memories of my childhood.
It's wonderful. Do you remember some of the families that lived along the street? Do you remember their last names?
Oh, absolutely. I can remember in the house that I grew up in, I don't know whether you were at the Center Street house across from Sylvia's.
Yeah.
But we had the Sylvia family, and it was a mom and dad and many children.
13 children.
With the 13 it was
children.
many. They had a lot.
And the last 7 were girls.
And so I remember growing up with them, and then the Matthews family was behind us.
Yeah. Jenny Roderick and Eddie were down the street.
Oh, absolutely down the street. I've forgotten about that. But yeah, and especially with the Sylvia kids, since they had so many kids, there was always somebody around our age to play with. So that was a lot of fun.
In the
who
other
else was
house
in-
on Center
yeah.
Street,
Okay.
we had the rest of the Sylvia family. Well, because they were all cousins, the brothers.
That's right.
And so there was Buff and Jean and I don't know who, the one that worked for Dennis DPW. We tied his boots together for Halloween.
Isn't that awful? I can't remember his name. Oh, dear. But then the girls, there were
You
the
know,
ladies.
Right, and then the ladies down the street. And then the Perrys.
The Perrys, Barb, yeah. Barb,
And there were
yeah.
Perrys across the street, further down. And the Wilkies.
Okay.
And the Perrys and the Cartons. Takes us to the corner.
Forgotten about all of them.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? It's
Right,
just,
but we also lived a mile from our cousins when they were down in the summertime. So that gave us another place to go. We could cross the
What was
street.
their last name?
They were the Woods.
The Woods,
family.
that's
They were
right.
the Woods family.
Yeah. And you also lived, they were next door to Belloc?
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, they were right next door to Belloca, and then Marietta Gomes lived next door to that. And then they built houses on Searsville Road.
Okay.
You know, they went up Searsville, remember?
Okay. I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So you had a lot of people to play with.
We did.
Oh,
We
yeah.
absolutely did. And then again, those were the days where, we see a lot on Facebook today about how times have changed and so forth. Well, those were the days where you would get up in the morning, you would go out, and then your parents generally wouldn't see you until the sun started to go down, because there was so many places to go.
Right, you go home for lunch.
Yes,
Go home for
you would.
lunch,
We'd go
check
home for
in.
lunch, but
Yeah.
then
Be
you were
gone.
just gone, and everybody's family took care of everyone else.
And we could walk to school,
Okay.
remember?
Yeah, we walked to school. I remember that because I often say that, we used to walk through the woods to school, and now there are no woods,
Right,
so.
it's all changed.
Yeah.
So you used to walk over to Ezra Baker?
We used to walk to Ezra Baker.
Uh-huh.
And I remember when Route 134 went in.
Okay. That's a
And
long
all
time.
I can
Absolutely.
all I can remember about it was the trucks and the dust. Because Mom fussed about the dust.
The dust,
She
yeah.
couldn't have the windows open, and even when the windows were closed, there was the dust.
Dust,
Remember that?
I do indeed. Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of changes that you remember when you start
Remember
something
when.
like this.
Yes, I remember. Oh, gosh. So you had a great childhood growing up as kids.
We did. You know, I think, I remember Mom and Dad often saying that we were a poor family. We were a poor family, you know, and it was like, I don't really know what they're talking about. I mean, we had a roof over our heads. We had 3 meals a day. I suppose in the terms of spending money and so forth, yes, we didn't have a lot of money to spend.
Right.
But you could do things that didn't require a lot of money. You know, I remember in Provincetown, the Blessing of the Fleet. We used to go down there. We just used to do things as a family. I never thought of us as poor, you know. But again, in the light of things, yes, we probably, you know, we didn't have a lot of money, but we didn't need a lot
You
of
didn't
money.
need it,
Right.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
We were talking the other day about the fact that everybody did the same thing. You went to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. Tuesday night, you could go to the basketball games at the high school. Friday night, you could go to the basketball games at the high school. Sunday, you went to church. Our friends who were Catholics went to catechism during the week.
Yes, I
whatever the
remember.
day was
Yeah.
during the week.
Yeah.
But that filled your life. So we didn't have to do a lot of other things because these were the things you were allowed to do,
Right, yeah.
you know? And then when you played sports, that was another whole ballgame, so.
Yeah. And you played a lot of sports.
No, I did the same thing you did.
You just-
We
yeah.
did basketball
Basketball.
and we did track,
Yeah.
but I had no use for field hockey.
You didn't like doing
I did not, still don't.
Okay.
No.
Wasn't your thing. That's okay. Okay, now, can you tell us, did you mix a lot with the Howard kids? How did that go? Because we're right next door.
Yeah, it is, and I'm thinking back to when I was a little girl, and we lived in Howard for a while.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
Where?
yeah,
Do
we
you remember
lived
where?
on Queen Anne Road.
Okay.
Were you?
I
Born then?
think that
Do you
was
remember
before I
that?
was born.
Okay.
When I was born, we came home to the house in Howich, over here on Great Western Road, on the corner. And I don't know the name of the street, but I know the house.
Okay.
But that's the house that, as an infant, I came out of
You
the
came
hospital
home to,
too.
okay.
But then I think
Okay.
we moved to South Dennis shortly thereafter.
Yeah, we weren't. As I recall, at least, I wasn't in Howard long.
Okay.
But long enough, I can, I can remember going to Aunt Olive's house, and I was a little girl and sitting in her garden, and she and I don't remember any other children, but I remember she and I would pick onions from the garden and sit there and eat them. Now, who in their
Eat
right mind
onions?
would sit and eat onions from a fresh garden? But I can remember that just as clear as a bell. It's so interesting
Yeah.
to me. Yeah,
So she
But-
lived in Howich too.
she did.
Before she moved to
did.
South Dennis on Searsville.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I remember names of people that I knew in Howard. So we must have had some
Connections.
interaction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
So-
we used to come down and visit Billy Monteiro and his family.
Okay.
Remember, they were across from the cemetery?
Okay. I don't remember that. But do you Rufus and Betty Pina?
Yeah, we used to
Okay.
visit with
They were
them.
on- Yeah, they were on Queen Anne Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And Billy Monteiro and his family are on the house that's right at the corner where the cemetery is. We take the left to go to Eagle Pond. We take the right to go to
Okay,
your house.
yeah,
That house
yeah,
right there.
Right there,
Used to
okay.
be
With the
Billy
house, I kinda
Monteiro and
remember
his
that.
family were
Okay,
there.
okay.
And we used to go over there a lot.
Okay.
That's in North Howard, yeah.
We used to go there a lot. But also, I took swimming lessons at Sand Pond.
Okay, so you mixed a
So
lot with
I
us
mixed
kids.
with a lot of kids.
Yeah.
You didn't take your swimming lessons there. You did your,
Well, I
you
still
did your
can't swim.
lessons at the beach. But yeah, I learned to swim and I learned to canoe
Yeah,
over at Sand Pond.
Well, it was
That
big back then.
Yeah,
Wow, that was
that's,
big.
well,
yeah,
how old would you have been at that point? Do you remember?
maybe 10, 12. And the
Because I
Woods
remember
kids all
all
used to swim across the pond.
oh, yeah.
Okay.
There were hardly any houses then.
No,
but yeah,
and
yeah.
they would get in the water and they'd swim across the pond,
Yep.
and it was like, if you all die in that water,
Yeah, you're in trouble.
because there was,
Picture, right?
they knew they weren't supposed to do it.
Half the kids did.
We don't let that
Exactly,
stop us. I
exactly.
mean, no, why would we do
I know.
that?
Yeah, so
Oh,
that was my
wow.
interest, but
Yeah.
also, where you and I played basketball in the same league, we
Yeah.
knew each other
A lot.
that way
Yeah,
too. You
yeah.
know, you met other kids through basketball or whatever the sport
Sports
was
you were
that you did.
playing, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I had more interaction with kids
I
from
think you
Howard
did. I mean,
as an older kid
uh-huh,
than you had
did.
had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take you back now because you had
Oh,
two
boy.
wonderful
Oh,
parents.
boy.
Two wonderful. Okay, how far back can you remember, like your parents, your grandparents, great parents, great grand? How far back can you remember?
I can remember my dad's mom in particular, Nana. I remember Nana very clearly. I guess as a child, I was probably thinking she was really strange. Very, very nice and very loving. And I don't
Yeah.
mean it that way. But she smoked a pipe.
Okay.
I had never seen a woman smoke a pipe before. I mean, that's like, wow, just where did that come from kind of thing. I remember her as being relatively stern, but not unloving in any way, just stern, just probably along the line of children should be seen and not heard kind of thing. But I remember she wore a kerchief around her head, and she sat in the rocking chair, and she had this pipe.
Oh.
And then I don't ever really remember her interacting with us.
Okay.
You know, I don't ever remember sitting on her lap or
She
reading
didn't
stories.
speak English, did she?
And that might have been that very well may have been that she didn't. Yeah, I don't remember that. The thing that sticks out of me is for her was the pipe, and when she died, and when she died, she was waked in the house,
Oh, yeah.
and that was probably one of the first deaths that I had ever known or seen or whatever. And so that was it. It was just strange in a lot of ways,
A lot,
because
yeah,
it was
yeah,
the
a new
first.
experience,
But
yeah.
then but then I had not seen that, and I that holds a memory for me. I do not remember my grandfather at all. Not, I don't
Now,
remember
was your
anything
grandmother
about him.
or grandfather the first generation coming here to the States, or they had been even before then?
No, I believe so. I believe
No,
he was first.
He was
Yes,
first, and then her.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've actually seen his naturalization
And
papers.
what islands were they coming off of? Do you
I
remember?
knew you were going to ask me that, and I don't
Fogo,
remember.
Bravo.
It was either
No,
it wasn't Fogo. I thought it was Fogo.
no, I think it was Boa Vista.
Boa Vista?
I think it was
Okay,
Boa Vista.
okay.
I have that information. I actually did some researching, not a lot, but I have seen his naturalization papers, and I've seen his military registration, and he served in the war. So I've seen some of those papers because they're on file at the courthouse.
Okay.
And so I went over because I'm like, okay, I need to, and it was quite an experience to actually look and see his signature, his own documentation. That was very, very cool. Because I didn't know either of them.
Yeah.
So that
They
was
had passed.
really kind of neat.
Did
yeah.
your mom and dad ever talk about why your grandparents came here? Was there any talk about why
Not
they
that I
arrived?
remember. Yeah, not
Okay.
that I
Nothing,
remember. And I think you are
nothing.
right about the island, because I think I'm thinking about Arthur's father,
Yeah.
that he
Came
over.
over.
We have some stories of our grandfather, but I know absolutely nothing about my grandmother.
Oh, okay.
Nothing. I mean, and what Cynthia just said now, I hadn't heard that before. So
See, something new.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
right.
that was,
Something
yeah,
new
that
to
was
add
that
on,
was
which
new.
is kinda
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, right in that house at, that house is still standing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was right in there.
Now, is the old house still there, or has everything been knocked down where
No,
Grandma
as far
used
as
to
I know,
used
it's
to
still
live?
there.
Still there.
It's still
There,
there?
yeah.
Wow.
Still there. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And it's pretty much in its original
It was
state.
great.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was-
I'm just curious too, you told me a little about Dad's family, how about Mom's family? Anything interesting about Mom? Did she ever share anything, or your grandparents on Mom's side?
Mom grew up in Boston. I was born in Everett and grew up in Boston. Yeah, we have more pictures, or I have more pictures of Mom and her family and us growing up because before we came to the Cape, well, Dad was in the service and so forth, and they lived in Boston for a little bit. And I was a baby at that point, but so I've got baby pictures and things like that. Yeah, Mom was USO dancer. She was a dancer.
See?
She was a dancer.
Well, she's
and
a very attractive woman,
yeah.
even now. She's 97?
97.
God bless her.
And I think Dad loved her legs because I've seen pictures that say, like, crazy legs or something, different, like oh, yeah, okay. But, yeah, she was a dancer, and she grew up in a single-parent household. And had a sister and a brother. Let's see. What else? I remember the house on Bower Street, which is where we lived.
Okay.
I lived in, and again, I was a little girl at that point. And basically, they were living in Boston when I was born. They were here on vacation when I was born. So that was sort of wasn't supposed to happen that way.
Yeah, she's
But
a
it
Cape
did.
Codder
I'm a
by
Cape Cod,
default.
yeah, right.
That's okay.
Pretty much, pretty much, yeah. So that's it.
But we spent a lot of time in Boston.
Yes, we did.
Visiting our relatives.
Yeah, our father really, really loved our grandmother.
Okay, yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time in Boston. Mom would go, she'd go shopping. We'd get up on a Sunday morning and Mom and Dad would say, we're going to go to church with your grandmother. And we would get in the car and drive to Boston. And those days,
That's a
it was a
hike.
2-hour trip to Boston. And we would be at
Church,
St.
yeah.
Augustine and St.
We sure
Martin's
would,
Church
absolutely.
before my grandmother got there.
Wow.
So she would get to church and we would be there.
Wow.
Yeah, I
And we're
remember
still
that.
friends with people that we know from
From
those
those
days
days.
as children going back and forth to Boston.
That's amazing.
And I remember my mother putting me on the train in Hyannis,
Yeah,
and my grandmother picking me up
On the
off
other end.
the train on the other end in Boston.
That's great.
And I probably was, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, something like that, but traveling, and they would tell the folks she's traveling alone,
Yep.
and her grandmother will be on the other end. But yes, we spent a lot of time in Boston, which was
That's
nice.
really
It
nice.
was
Right.
really
Because you
nice.
see
It
two
was.
sides of the
It was.
family.
Exactly,
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
which is great.
Yeah.
And the Woods
And
family
really-
also lived in Boston, and our Aunt Mary, Dad had a sister, Teresa, who was Wood, and a sister, Mary, who was Mary Good. And they all lived in Boston. Uncle Manny, his only brother, lived here on the Cape.
Right.
So we would see our cousins here. We'd see Roma and Manny Jr. here. But when we'd go to Boston, we'd start out at church and then we'd make the rounds. So you went to Aunt Mary's house and you went down Teresa's house and you went to Uncle Tim and Auntie May's house and then we would come home.
Kept a nice close family
Really,
connections.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really pretty cool. Okay, I just had a couple other questions. Did you ever check your genealogy? Did you ever try 23andMe or
I did
Ancestry.com?
23andMe. And if I had known you were going to ask, I would have looked it up because I've forgotten what it said. I remember that when I first got the results back, I think like everybody, you know a little bit, but you don't know a whole lot. And there were some things in it, and I for the life of me can't remember what they are now.
It's okay.
But it was like, wow, I didn't know that. I've got to look at this and study this and spend more time with it because it was fascinating. It was fascinating. I remembered I think the amount of, the percentage of European blood that I had was like, where did that come from? How did that, how did that happen? But I've not pursued it any further. I wish I had, because I'd like to know more. But it's interesting, things that you know, and then things that you had no idea. And you wonder if the ancestors, the immediate ancestors that we know really knew about that, or, did they know and didn't tell, or did they not know? I'd like to know more about that. I really would
it's
like to
really
know more about
fascinating.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of that comes from the slave trade.
Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
all
yes,
the
exactly,
intermingling.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of things that will show.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I will not do DNA testing.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the fact that they have
Buying
the rights to
information.
your, they have the rights to my DNA, and
Yeah.
I'm not giving anybody
That's
that right.
part of
So,
the
yeah,
discussions
so
that goes
I'll
on.
rely on hers.
That's all right, that's okay.
I probably tend to be a lot more trusting than she is.
That's all right. In this day and age, we can't be too
Yeah,
careful.
Exactly.
Yeah, you never know, you just don't know. Okay, I have a couple other things there. Were there any funny stories that you can remember growing up that you'd like to share, anything that was funny, that sticks in your mind?
Ooh, I don't know about funny. I remember some fun times, some really just fun times that we had. Dad loved to crab. He loved to crab. And if you didn't find him at home, you usually found him at the crab bridge. I mean, that's where he would be. And he taught us from the time we were little ones to crab. And it was something that I know I just loved to do. I loved being there and catching the crabs and watching him net the things and how they would scurry away. And he was so good and so patient about that kind of thing.
And he never swore.
He never.
He never swore.
Okay.
He would,
Yeah.
if the crab didn't come into the net and it scurried off,
He was like,
okay, there'll be another
try
one.
again. Yeah, that's it. And we would get the crabs, and then we'd go home and we'd cook the crabs, and we'd put the paper out on the picnic table
picnic
and
table,
just
yep.
pick them apart. It just was so much fun. And
and he passed that on to the kids.
he did.
All of
He-
his
he
grandchildren.
did,
All
yeah.
of his grandchildren know how to
Yeah.
crab.
Crab.
Every last one of them.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And those were just fun things that we did. And again, not costing a lot of money to do, but just going and spending the time. And when I stop and think about our kids today and the parents today, and you just wonder how much time that is so special, And I'm not sure that I'd spent as much time with my kids as it seems like my dad and mom spent with us.
You remember Dad chasing them after the fire engines?
Oh, always. Oh, always. Of course. Of
Back
course.
in the day, we
Of
had.
course.
Well, you would
We'd use
remember
the fire
too. We had the
whistle.
fire whistles.
Yeah,
Oh my
okay?
goodness. He would go and I would just again.
He would
with
know the
fondness, he would say-
signals. What was one? What was two?
Yeah,
What was
where they
three?
were.
And
and he would say, "Come on,
Let's go."
kids, let's go."
Let's go.
and we
And
go
we'd jump in the
chase
car
fires.
and we'd go. And then as you get older, the firemen are saying, well, people stay away from these fires and stuff. Dad was right there. It was right there, and so were we. I mean, it was just like, this was so good. Yeah, we would do, oh my goodness gracious.
That was always
oh.
and rainbows.
And
My
he loved to
father
chase the
loved
rainbows?
rainbows. He
Yeah.
loved rainbows. And he would sit outside, and we'd have the storm, and the storm would pass, and he would be sitting outside, and eventually he'd call us out, come see the rainbow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my mother was, a typical stay-at-home mom. She was home until I was 8,
Yeah.
and then she went to work at Ezra Baker in the cafeteria, and she stayed there till she retired. But up until that point in time, she was home.
Yeah.
She just would be.
But she was always active, though. I mean, she's 97, and she's still pretty
she was pretty
active
active.
for quite
Well,
some time.
it's funny. I was thinking about different things that Mom and Dad did. Now, Dad he was one of the charter members of the Capesters, and that was a golf group.
Golfed it, yes.
We were going through some things and came across with the certificate that he had from being one of the originals. He was in the military. Mom she was really involved at Christ Church Episcopal in Howardsport.
Because she was
So
very
she was,
active.
she was active in the women's group, and she was active in whatever organizations they had through the church. She was involved in, and we were involved in youth group.
Yep, and
So,
in scouts and
yeah.
things. And she was,
Yeah, she was a scout leader.
very supportive of us in just about everything that we did. I mean, just about everything. Both of them were taskmasters. I mean, they were, if you started something, you finished it.
Yeah.
You know.
Or you'd hear about it?
Oh,
And even if you
know,
didn't want to start that spinach, you were going to start it, you were going to finish it.
Yeah. You know, you ate what was on your plate.
Yep.
You, again, if you started something, if we were starting a music lesson or something like that, it was okay. You know, you can do that, but you will finish it. Don't,
Right.
you know, it's not one of these 2 months, I don't want to do it anymore.
You're
No.
gonna finish it, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're really taught. You start something,
Exactly.
you finish it.
Yeah.
And Dad had chickens
That he
Did
did.
he?
We,
Okay.
yes,
He had
we
chickens.
chickens.
down in the backyard.
Yeah.
Who
And I
had
remember
chickens?
the old car with the rumble seat in the back.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
And
And
that's
Uncle
funny.
Peter.
Yes, dear old Uncle Peter. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
We, gee whiz,
Yeah.
wow.
yeah.
It's really a trip down memory lane.
Now, they named a bridge.
Yes.
And the plaque is over there in Bass River, am I saying
No,
it
it's
right?
Swan River.
Swan River.
And it's not the bridge, because the bridge was already named for someone.
Okay.
So the town said that they would name a bench and the deck for our dad, but only if it was also named for our mom,
Right.
because they knew that she had been a contributor in the town, and that they thought that was a great opportunity to honor both of our parents.
That was really pretty
So
nice.
nice.
it
It was
was.
nice.
So the plaque is there, and every day when I go over the bridge, I check to make sure it's still there,
Yeah.
because it's bronze, and
Yes.
I want to be sure that it stays there and doesn't find its way to somebody's pocket for metal.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really kind of nice.
it's
It's
nice. It was a proud moment.
and
It
yeah,
really was a
was,
proud
yeah.
moment.
and different
were always
people in
very
the
active.
yeah,
Yeah.
different people in the town will say, you know, every time I go over that bridge, I wave to your dad, even though he's not there anymore.
That's
You know,
sweet.
because people did that. They'd go by, they'd say, "Hey, Joe," he'd turn around and say, "Hey," and you know, so yeah. And it was a really nice way to honor our parents.
It was. It was.
And,
And well
we were very
deserved.
fortunate.
It was.
Very
It was
fortunate.
well deserved.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was really nice.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it was nice. It was nice of Mom was basically the one that started it. She wanted to do something after Dad passed, and that seemed to be the logical thing, because that was the bridge where he crabbed probably
the
the
time.
most.
Right.
Right.
And just like Julia said, people would go by and beep, and he'd wave, and you know, you might say to him, "Who was that?" I don't know. It didn't make any
Yeah, yeah.
difference. It
He'd
didn't make
still
any
talk.
difference.
And
He-
it's also
you
the
know, he
river that
just-
went down behind the house
That's
that he grew up in.
Uh-huh.
You know, it ends down at the story ends down at the
Yeah.
end down
that was
behind the
special.
house.
Plus,
So,
Dad worked for the town for years
Oh, yeah.
as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I know Mom was always busy in
Yeah.
the town office.
Yeah,
She was
yes,
very active.
Yes.
yeah, she was a
Yeah.
registrar of voters,
Yeah.
and she worked in the cafeteria for.
Yeah.
I think it was 50 years total was her service in the town.
Wow. No, I know
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
always active. I would always see her out and about. She was pretty spunky.
And she did the voter
And she's still pretty
registration thing
spunky.
for,
She is, yeah.
well into her 80s. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that it was into her 90s, but
Yeah,
well
she
into her
was
80s, she was doing
she was
working in
into
town
her
hall.
late 80s when she
Yeah.
decided that she couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Oh, she does well. God bless her. Well, I'm going to ask you now a little bit about your adult life, because you two have been very, very active your whole life, in terms of not only in your profession, but also outside in various clubs and organizations. So you want to share some of the cool things that you do and what you've headed up, and
You want to start?
yeah, because you've been,
Start.
both of you have been
I think
very
you should
active.
start. You start on that. I'm going to
I'll
think
get you
about
that.
something. Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm very involved in the Massachusetts Teachers Association. I've been involved with the union. I started my union involvement when I was in Connecticut, before we moved back home. So I've been on the board of directors. I've been a director to the National Education Association from Massachusetts. It's a passion, and I am still continuing it. I belong to MTA now, and I'm on the Retired Members Committee. It's something that I think is really, really important, and so I spend a lot of time with it. I'm also on the board of directors of Zion Union Heritage Museum in Hyannis, and my new involvement is with the YMCA Teen Achievers. They have a new program at DY High School, so I was asked to be part of that. So I do that. You know, we're involved in church. You know,
You're very active.
I do the things that I feel I should be doing. And with Larry, we do the things we think we should be doing. So we're just staying involved.
Well, you've been very active, and you certainly impacted a lot of kids, so I thank you for that.
Oh, there's a lot of
It's
kids.
a lot of kids that you helped out in a lot of different ways, and
lot of kids,
it
a
was
lot of
great.
But
you know.
she's done a great job with the things that she has
She
been
has,
involved
yeah.
with. And
But you
really,
too,
really
so-
is. Yeah,
It's
well,
nice to
I
hear.
think a lot of that comes from mom and dad, though. I mean,
Yeah.
they gave them of themselves, and we saw that. You know,
Oh,
we saw
absolutely.
that. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember when they took in the foster children?
No.
Okay, Mom and I
was-
took in
when
foster
was
children,
that?
and the funny part about that was that I remember them being with us. I don't remember how long they were with us, but it was a boy and a girl, a brother and a sister, and that was fine, and that was part of what they did.
I remember that.
And probably about, I don't know, it's probably been 15 years now, I was in town, Falmouth, and ran into my foster brother, who lives in Falmouth. And I see him often.
Really?
Usually see him at Dunkin' Donuts, yeah. And we talk, and it's like, wow, I just, who would have thought that would have happened? And he's told me now that he's like 68, 69 years old. And I know we laugh about that. It was like, yeah.
Okay, but see, at that age, I wasn't born.
Born then, yeah, so, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
if he was 68 or
Yeah.
69, I wasn't born.
So we
Wow.
talk about that, and that's really neat. That's really neat. But so we have been taught to help out,
Right.
extend a hand, or do whatever. So it's only natural that we would do those things. I'm involved very much in church in Falmouth. It happened for quite some time. My husband and I did Sunday school and youth group and did all of that stuff, and really have some nice memories of that kind of thing. I'm aging now, so I'm on the board of directors of the Cemetery Association. And the saddest part about that is that I'm one of the youngest members, which is really, it's kind of like, really. But I will say, I have to say that when I was first asked, I really felt a little like, oh, really? Are you kidding me? Yeah. But first of all, the cemetery that I'm on the board of directors has quite a rich history, and I have learned so much about the people that are buried there, and it's just, it's really nice. It's just nice. I mean, have you ever heard of cemetery tours before? We do
Yes,
cemetery
yes.
tours and things, and they're wonderful.
Yeah,
They're
my friend
great
Brenda
fun.
could tell you a little bit about some of those things.
So we do that. I am now very involved in, I think we all are, in making ourselves known in our community for the political things that are going on, and how we feel about them, our opposition to certain things, and so forth. So that's been good. For me, it helps to keep me aware of what's going on around me, because I think it would just be so easy to sit back and not be aware. I am not as involved with the young folks as I used to be, but it's fun watching those children that we have helped along the line grow up, and watch them as parents and see how different things have impacted them, and things that you just take for granted in every day. They're just things that you do because they're right to do.
Right.
And it's good sometimes to see things come back. I had a friend on Facebook who was a young person that we had mentored years ago, and just hearing from her and hearing different things that have made a difference in her life that we were involved with, and you just kind of think, gee, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of mentorship there, that maybe something that we said took hold at some point. I will be honest, while I love doing the things that I do, I pick and choose them now because I'm tired.
But you can.
And I can,
That's the thing, you
absolutely,
can.
absolutely.
You can.
And I said to somebody the other day, it's time for other folks to take over. It really is, and I'll help out where I can, but no, I'm not going to head things anymore.
That's
So
okay. You've done your share, which is great.
But I want to say something here about experiences that we have had. And probably one of the best experiences that we have had, I'm speaking for you too,
okay.
was going to President Barack Obama's inauguration,
man. Oh.
the first inauguration, and going with our mom and some of our children and some of our grandchildren.
Oh, that's great.
And what a wonderful, wonderful time we had. And from a historical point of view, to be able to say to the rest of the grandchildren who have come since and the great-grands that this is something that we actually witnessed in our lifetime, and we were there,
Yeah.
which was just
was unbelievable.
amazing,
Unbelievable, yeah.
absolutely amazing to walk down the street with the kids, and it was awesome. And both Mom and my mother-in-law were at that point in time able to go.
To go. That's amazing.
And so
you had
we were
3,
able
4
to,
generations.
we were
Wow.
able to do it generationally, which
that
was
was
just
very, very special.
amazing.
Yeah.
And then we did the Women's March.
We did.
Oh, great.
We
Yeah.
did.
We did the Women's March. We got on a bus and we went to
We have an
DC.
adventuresome spirit.
But that's
we
great.
do. We have an adventuresome spirit, and all it takes is somebody to say,
Let's-
"Do you think you'd like to go
Uh-huh.
anywhere?" and it
like,
doesn't make
we'll
any
go.
difference.
We'll go.
And we get 2 or 3 together, and we pick up the others along the way, and we go. And you know, I will tell people that, and they'll say, "Yeah, you're crazy." And it's like, yeah, we are, but we enjoy each other's company, and B, just have that spirit of adventure. You know,
wonderful.
why not? You know,
Yeah.
why not spend 20 some odd hours on a bus?
Right, right. We also have a younger sister.
You know?
And Nora is quite a bit younger than I am. But still, we get together and as a family, and I guess that's probably the biggest legacy of our parents, is that as a family, we like each other in addition to loving each other. And we do things and we go places together. And our children all know each other as cousins and spend time together and like to spend time with each other. And that's probably the biggest legacy that we have, is that we spend time together. We do things. We went off Sunday in the pouring rain and did a few things. And we just, we have fun.
That's
We have fun.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, before we kind of wrap this up, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before I ask you another question? Was there anything throughout your time?
I don't think so. Do you?
Well,
Can you
from a
think of
historical
anything?
point of view, I think it's important. Cynthia was married to Arthur Pina from Falmouth, and she has 2 daughters,
Right.
Christine and Gretchen, and she has 3 grandchildren.
Grandchildren.
You have Arthur and Kason and Noah,
Right.
and I have, how many children? I have 4
4
children.
children.
I have 4 children. Nina is my oldest. She's married to Jerry Palmer, who's from Falmouth. They live in Texas. And they have 4 children. We have Vanessa is the oldest and the older granddaughter. And we have Maxwell, Miles, Jacob. And Vanessa has a son, Levi. So we are great-grandparents. Our second child is Diane. She lives in D.C. Our third child is Claire, who is married to Brandon Allen, and they live in Arlington, Massachusetts. And then the youngest of our children is Lawrence, who is currently living on the Cape. The only one of the children who's still on the Cape is Lawrence, and his passion is scuba diving, which just amazes his father and I. And I think my father would just be such a champion of Lawrence and the water and under the water and experiencing the wildlife and following up on, you know, we started out crabbing and now he's passionate about what's under the sea and all the things that go with that.
Well, he's
And
traveled around the
just-
world, like
well,
Thailand,
he's going to
Mexico,
Thailand. Yeah, he's
scuba
headed
diving.
back to Thailand
It's
again.
amazing.
And so, you know, when you look at the whole family, and they're all so very different, Mom and Dad would be really,
Oh,
well,
very-
Mom,
very
we
Mom
know,
is
is thrilled. She's thrilled. But Dad would have been very pleased to see how we've branched out and the things that we've done as their children.
You've
The kids
accomplished
are
a
not
lot.
afraid to see the world. They've
Oh, they
gone
surely
and
are.
Which is
just-
great.
Right,
Yeah,
they have no
that's
fear.
good.
No,
Yeah.
No
no
fear,
fear,
which is
you're right.
great.
But then again, that's the spirit of
Yeah.
adventure too,
Yeah.
is that, you know, let's try it.
Exactly.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. So-
Cynthia's daughter just came back from China.
That's great.
I'm like,
Yeah.
kids of color don't go to China. Kids of color don't scuba dive
Yeah.
in Thailand.
Yeah,
It's just amazing.
that's great that they're
But
doing
that-
it.
It is,
It's
absolutely.
amazing.
It is.
It's
It's
amazing.
wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It's so
Well,
good
I-
to see them.
I really wanted to thank you so much for doing all this, but I want one last thing, because we hope that, you know, like 100 years from now, your great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be looking at this. Is there any message that you'd like to leave for the future generations? Anything that you,
I think if I were to leave any message, it would be that you can do whatever you
Yep.
want to do. And the only limitations are those that you put on yourself.
Yeah.
I just, it amazes me to see what young people can do and are doing today. And especially when you talk about our kids of color, they are not letting any barriers stop them. I am so very proud of our kids, and each and every one of them. They are so different in so many ways, and yet both have the same focus that they can do and they will do. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I remember that Mom and Dad would tell us that there's nothing that can stop you. And you know, you may hit upon some barriers, and you may have to fight through some things that things are not given to you. You have to work for them. But by golly, you can do it. And I have just, again, seen that in our kids, and so proud of that in each and every one of them. You know, that
And they've done
whatever
well.
they have chosen to do, they can do and do it well.
that's great,
So,
that's great.
yeah.
I think I have to go back a little bit in time
Uh-huh.
to the Civil Rights Movement and the NAACP Cape Cod Chapter when we were
When
kids.
okay.
And I remember the reverse Freedom Riders that were sent here.
Wow, yeah.
And I can vaguely remember conversations that Mom and Dad had at that time. You know, because it was about Kennedy, and we used to go to the airport.
Airport to
Dad
see-
would take us to the airport when John Kennedy was coming in, so that we could see whatever it was we could see, which wasn't much. But that
We were
because
gonna see it,
we
whatever it
needed
was.
to be aware of what was going on, and I look back, and whatever marches over, I can remember we had a black button with white equal sign on it, and it was black equals white from something that we did with Mom. And I think the effect that had on me, along with my parents saying you can do anything you want, basically gave me the message that not only can I do anything I want, no one has the right to stop me. And I think that's so important for young people now to know.
Definitely,
Don't let anybody tell you no.
right.
If you can dream it,
You can do it.
you can do it. You may have to go over, under, around, or through, and that's what I say to kids all the time. You come to a barrier, you figure out how to go over, under, around, or through it. Because if your goal is on the other side, then you need to get there. And I really think that at that time, it was so ingrained in me. And I still say, I'm still working with younger people. Now they're not young. Working with younger people. I'm still seeing some of the kids that went through DY when I was there. And watching them, they're now in their 40s,
Right.
heading into their 50s. And the fact that they have taken that and they've seen challenges and they've said, I can do this. And it's so important for this next generation and the one after that. You can do it. You just have to figure a way to make it happen.
Very good.
Very good. And those are all important messages. Well, ladies, I definitely really want to thank you so much for your time and all your information and
Thank
your
you.
wisdom.
Yes, indeed.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And again, thank you. This is Cynthia, and this is lovely Julia. And I'd also like to thank Brooks Free Library, the Howard
Right.
Historical Society, our lovely photographer and researchers, Brenda and Bill Collins, and of course our beloved Albert Rainio for all of his support and
Absolutely.
encouragement. So
Absolutely.
thank you, ladies, and
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for
hopefully
having
we
us.
get to see you.